G'day ladies and gentlemen, Scotty D here from the Australia's Tabletop Wargaming Network, and welcome into the next installment in our series, How to Play Warhammer 40,000, 10th edition. Alrighty ladies and gentlemen, so today's video, as I've said, is the next installment in our How to Play Warhammer 40,000 10th edition series, where we're going to continue to have our look at the different ways that you can play the game, as well as how to go about constructing armor lists and the core mechanics of the game as well. And for today's video, we're going to be walking through all the rules that are involved in the movement phase of the game. And we're just going to jump straight on into it here, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the movement phase is broken up into two different steps. You've got the moving unit step and the reinforcement step of the movement phase. So we're going to be starting off by looking at the moving unit step. So to start with, you select one unit from your army on the battlefield to make a move. Unless that unit is within engagement range of an enemy unit or units, it can choose to make either a normal move or an advanced move, or it can choose to remain stationary. However, if the chosen unit is within engagement range of an enemy unit, it can only make either a fallback move or choose to remain stationary in close combat here. Now, we're going to have some of these different types of moves explained in just a second with some examples on screen for you guys as well, so I got to show you how you go through the process of resolving each of these moves. So a normal move is just taking the models in the chosen unit and moving them their movement characteristic in inches, and they cannot end that move within engagement range of any enemy units. And for example, for the unit of intercessors we have right in front of us on screen, we're going to be able to move those guys 6 inches because that is their movement characteristic, and they're going to finish outside of engagement range of those Necron warriors. Next up, we've got the advanced move. Now, the models in the chosen unit get to move their movement characteristic as well as a random D6 roll in inches and cannot end that move within engagement range of enemy models. This unit can also not make any shooting attacks or make any charges this turn as well, unless they've got rules that allow them to do so. So we're going to do the exact same thing with our intercessors. We're going to roll that D6 to see how far they move, and they get to go that far in addition to their normal movement as well. Next up, we've got the fallback move, which is a bit more complex. Now, if a unit is making a fallback move, it moves a distance equal to its movement characteristic in inches, and you are able to move within enemy units' engagement range. However, you cannot end the fallback move within engagement range of any enemy units. Now, if doing this is not possible, then you cannot make a fallback move at all. Alright, so the next type of movement, as you can see with the intercessors, have gotten into close combat with those Necron warriors, and we're actually going to do a fallback move for these guys. So we're actually going to measure out the 6 inches from the back of the base, and we're going to move them that back 6 inches so that they're able to get out of close combat with that fallback move, and they're no longer engaged with those Necron warriors. And just maintaining unit coherency as well whilst we make that move. And that is how a fallback move works as well. Now, when you choose to make a fallback move, the unit falling back can move over enemy models as if they were not there when doing so. But if you do so by moving through enemy models, you must now take a desperate escape test, where you roll a d6 for each model in the unit that is falling back, and for each result on a 1 or a 2, one model in that unit is actually destroyed. So that is something to bear in mind when you're choosing to make fallback moves, if you're needing to go through enemy units to make those rolls. Alrighty, so we've got the 5 intercessors are in close combat with some warriors right in front here. Then they've got the Lich Guard right behind, and so they're going to make a fallback move, but the only way they can actually go is actually backwards away from the enemy unit, and they're going to have to go through the Lich Guard. So they're going to pop out the other side of the Lich Guard, and I have to make a desperate breakout test, or desperate escape test, I should say, for each of the intercessors that have fallen back through an enemy unit. And of course, I roll terribly, and that means that 4 of them are dead. Only 1 of them passed that desperate escape test. Now, the rules for falling back when you're falling back through enemy models don't also apply to any units that have got both the fly or the Titanic keyword. So make sure you're checking your data sheets when you do go to make those fallback moves, that you aren't, taking models off when you really shouldn't be. Now, if the unit is battle shocked when it's choosing to make a fallback move, it then also must make a desperate escape test when making just a regular fallback move, even if it doesn't move through enemy models as well. However, each model can only trigger one desperate escape test per phase, so you're not going to take two if you're falling back as a battle shocked unit and then falling back through an enemy unit as well. So those are a few things to keep in mind. Now, as the controlling player, you get to determine the order in which your units move in and which models within each unit move, if all of them or only some of them choose to move. Now, whenever you move your models, you can pivot and or change its path that it is moving throughout the course of its move. However, when you are doing so, you cannot have any part of the base move across an enemy model or over a table edge. It can move over friendly models, but cannot finish its move on top of another model. And the only exception to this is monsters and vehicle keyword models, which cannot move over friendly models and must move around them unless they've got the fly keyword, for example, which we'll cover in a little bit. You also need to measure a model's move from the base and or hull of the model that is moving the furthest along its path. This does include any pivots that you choose to make or path changes. Now, another aspect of movement is knowing how to move models over terrain, especially when the tables you are playing on or playing Warhammer 40,000 on have a variety of different terrain types, so it's important to understand how to actually maneuver across terrain. When a model makes any sort of move, it can be moved over terrain but not through it. So for example, it cannot go through a wall, but it can go over it. If the terrain feature is 2 inches tall or less in height, then models may move over it without using any of their movement to do so, so they just move freely over it. You still get your full move. However, if the terrain feature is taller than that 2 inches, then it has to climb up and or down, counting any vertical distance moved as a part of its move for that turn. But a model cannot finish any kind of move mid-climb. So it does mean that if you do not have enough movement to reach the next level or to hit the ground floor, then you can't actually make that move at that point in time. So now we've got the intercessors that are going to try and move over this terrain to engage with those Necron warriors. So first off, we measure to the point that these guys are going to move, and it looks like as though it's going to be 3 inches. So these guys are actually going to need to make an advance roll. So their advance roll is going to be a 6. So they're going to be able to get to 3 inches right at the front. Then the distance that they move up is going to be 3.5 inches. And so it means they've got 5.5 inches left on these first lot of guys, which is going to end up being another 4 inches. Now, they're not going to have enough movement to actually get down, so they're going to have to stay where they are, and then we're going to do the same for these back guys. Currently, they're going to move another 2 inches, leaving them with 7 inches left on their movement. So we said it was 3.5, so that's going to put them at 10.5 inches of movement, and then they've got 1.5 inches to move forward to get within unit coherency of other models within their unit, and then they're able to shoot at those Necron warriors as well. Now, models with the fly keyword have some different rules when it comes to their movement. When a model with the fly keyword makes a normal advance or fallback move, it can move over enemy models as if they were not there, and they can enter an enemy unit's engagement range when moving as well. This does also apply to monster and vehicle units that have the fly keyword as well, as I had mentioned previously. However, models with the fly keyword are not allowed to finish their move on top of enemy models or within engagement range of enemy units, and also can't finish on top of friendly models as well. If a model with the fly keyword starts, crosses over, or ends its move on a terrain feature, it measures its path through the air, so you measure from the point at which it starts on the ground up to the piece of terrain, and if it's going back down the terrain, you measure from that point on the terrain back down onto the ground level, as well as is mentioned in some of the rules commentary images too. from its starting point to all other points along its movement path to interact with the terrain as well. Alrighty, so the Vanguard veterans have the fly keyword, so we're going to actually move them up and over this piece of terrain right here. So we start off by measuring the vertical distance from there, which is going to be about 5 inches for the front guys. Actually, it's probably going to end up being 6 when they go forward. So we're going to move those guys to 6, which they're going to end up being about there. For these back guys, it's probably going to be about 8 inches to get that guy up, and then these two getting up to there as well. So they've used about 8 inches of their movement so far to get up to that first story. Then they've got 4 inches of movement left, and they're just going to move forward to the front of this area on this little bunker, so that they are then able to make a charge and get into combat with those Lich Guard during the charge phase. After you've completed moving all of your units, you then come to the reinforcement step of the movement phase. Now, some units are allowed to start the game in reserves, which do not start on the battlefield, but come onto the battlefield throughout the game. Such units are also known as reserve units. If any reserve units are not deployed on the battlefield throughout the game, they count as destroyed at the end of the battle. Now, in this step of the movement phase, you were able to set up any number of reserve units onto the battlefield, doing so one at a time. There are several different ways that reserve units can come onto the battlefield, but the two most common are using strategic reserves or the deep strike ability. Each of these rules will explain how the unit is coming in from reserves is to be set up on the battlefield and the specific distance away from enemy models you must place them. This distance is measured horizontally, even though you would normally measure it to the closest part of the model. So you measure it horizontally. Say you've got some miniatures up on, say, a second level. You actually measure it horizontally from where they would be on the ground floor, not diagonally to where that model is. That's pretty much what that is saying there. Now, units that arrive from reserves always count as having made a normal move and cannot move any further during the current movement phase. However, they are able to act normally for the remainder of the turn, so they can make shooting attacks and choose to charge if they wish to do so. And once you have set up all of your reserve units you want to for the current turn, the movement phase ends, and you can now move on to the shooting phase. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, so that is it for today's video, looking at the movement phase for how to play Warhammer 40,000 series. I hope you did understand how you go about moving your units and how you interact with terrain and such as well, and the smaller clips we included of such interactions as well. Now, if you do have any feedback or any comments on the video, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to hit it with a like, and if you want to catch more content from us here at the ATWN, feel free to hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell so you're able to be notified as to when we are releasing more content here on the channel. I want to thank everyone that is supporting us so far with those subscriptions, as we are halfway to that 1,000 point to being able to be monetized here on YouTube as well, which is absolutely awesome. Now, if you do want to catch the content we are creating live, you can find us over on our Twitch channel, where we do hobby progress, commission painting, but also we do tournament previews, the South Pacific ITC Snapshot, as well as tournament coverage from various events across the Australian Southeastern Seaboard. You can ask questions there if you have any further questions, or get hobby advice, gaming advice and stuff when we are live as well. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank each and every one of you, as well as our supporters both on Twitch and our Ko-Fi page, for supporting the network and what we do. And I shall catch you in the next one, ladies and gentlemen.